Hi, friends. Welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. Today is very exciting. It's the start of all my end of year content. And so today we're doing a live discussion of the 56 anticipated sci fi fantasy books on my radar for 2025. Now, I am sure I will not read all of these, but they're the ones on my radar. I'll probably read a lot of them. And for context, this does not include romantasy. If you want to see my romantasy things, if you're into that, like fantasy romance, where romance is a big piece of it, that is going to be coming later in my romance and romantasy list because it was just too much. So there's a bunch of fantasy, romance, romantasy, whatever you want to call it, coming in that. This is things where it is more strictly sci-fi fantasy, where romance, there may be romantic elements, but none of it is like the main thing. So that's kind of my preface. As to this question, I changed it back to 56. Part of it was there was a late edition after I had made it. And then when I was going through, I realized that I had a romantasy on the list. So I moved that to the romance area. So we're back to 56 anyway. Hi, everybody. How are you? Um, how's everyone doing? Give it a couple minutes so people can pop in. Hello. Welcome. Hey, Beth. Thank you. Yes, so we've got a lot. There is a lot coming um, next year. A lot of stuff. This is going to be. I have a slideshow that I'm going to show you, and it is going to be divided up by month. Gotta tell you, thank you. I do have to tell you, these are all tentative release dates. Sometimes they change, they can get pushed back, but as of today, this is the best information I have of when these books are coming out. What else did I want to say before I jump into this? Okay, one other thing. I because I'm trying to promote this, if you are interested, I do still have a few holiday boxes left in my Ko-fi shop. It's got 5 items from small minority and women-owned businesses, as well as a book, and you can kind of pick your preferred genres if you are interested in that, and they are 20% off through the end of the year. So if you want like a cozy holiday box, those are available. I would love to give them homes because I purchased all these things from these shops, and I already like sent off like 30 of them, but there are some left. So, all right, we're gonna dive into all of the books 2025 anticipated sci-fi and fantasy. And everything that is already up for pre-order is linked in the video description if you want to check it out. All right, we're going to start with January. Y'all, it's a lot of books to go through. We'll see how long this how long this takes us. Okay, first up, we have At the Fount of Creation by Toby Ogundiran. This is the second book in a fantasy duology that they're both novellas, and I really love the series. I have already read this. I had an early copy of it. They are West African inspired fantasy quick reads, really fun. I thought it was a great kind of epic conclusion. Recommend this one. I have also already read Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear by Shauna McGuire, and I loved it. If you like the Wayward Children series, which I'm a huge fan, I mean, it's really good. It's giving us the backstory of another character that we have known previously. So really interesting. Loved that. It's coming out in January. And then also in January, we have The Outcast Mage by Annabelle Campbell. This one I have not read yet, but it looks really interesting. Coming out, I think, from Orbit. A mage bereft of her powers must find out if she is destined to save the world or destroy it in this glittering debut fantasy, perfect for fans of Andrea Stewart, James Islington, and Samantha Shannon. So this should be high epic fantasy. It sounds great, so I'm definitely interested in that one. The other two coming out in January are The Teeth of Dawn by Marina Lostetter. This is the third book in a series that is a fantasy murder mystery, kind of like serial killer cult murder mystery type series. And so each book there's kind of an overarching plot, but then each book follows like it's in a magical world with detectives. It is kind of gritty, so content warnings for a lot of violence, child abuse in the second book, etc. But I do really like the series, so I'm interested in continuing. And then the last one for January is Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. This is one of two books from her that are going to be on this list. This one is coming out from, I think, Harper Voyager, a sci fantasy where a disabled woman writes a novel about androids and AI after the extinction of humanity, and then everything in the world actually starts to change. So it looks really interesting. I love Nnedi Okorafor's writing. She's phenomenal. So I will definitely be picking that one up. Yes, and it is blurbed by George R. R. Martin, which is great. I mean, her writing is so good. And she is disabled herself, so I love that she's been starting to write disabled characters in some of her books. All right. Next up is February. We don't have as many in February, but I think I have already read 3 out of the 4 February releases. I'm trying to get ahead on all of my 2025 arcs as much as I can. So The Beast We Bury by D.L. Taylor. This is a YA fantasy with romantic elements that is a debut. I thought it was pretty good. It's one heads up though is that some of the magic system does involve like the killing of animals. So if you're super sensitive to that, heads up that may be challenging for some people. But one of the main characters is a girl who is the heir to a king, and she has magic, but her magic involves requiring her to kill animals. She doesn't want to do it, but her father, who's abusive, is like forcing her to. And so there's like a political fantasy. I thought it was really good. I liked it. Then we have Skin by E.B. Zaboy. This is her first YA fantasy. It's a contemporary fantasy. It's written in verse, which is interesting, and it is drawing on Caribbean mythology or folklore of the Sukuyant, which is like a witch woman who can leave her skin behind and become like a fireball witch. And it's a lot about I mean, there's a lot of like moving pieces to this, but it's dealing with identity and immigration and colorism and coming of age, and it's really good. If you've read E.B. Boy before, she's fantastic. Then we have Illusions of Fire by Nisha Sharma, which I just finished. So I haven't even like really talked about this anywhere yet, but really good. This is her first fantasy novel as well, and it's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets a more mature Percy Jackson, but drawing on South Asian mythology. So really good, definitely more darker and steamier than a Percy Jackson level would be, but we have the descendants of figures from the Mahabharata, and it's really good. I liked this one a lot. And then Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is the sequel to Heartless Hunter, which I really loved this year. This is a upper YA fantasy with strong romantic elements, true enemies to lovers, like legit enemies. And it ended on a big cliffhanger. I think it's just a duology, so I'm definitely looking forward to that one. There is a red cover. So this is the Barnes& and Noble exclusive, which is the image I found when I was searching for this, but there's also a red one as well. Illusions of Fire is YA. It is a YA fantasy. Upper Y. I mean, like it's got, because she does write adult romance, but she's also written a couple YA books. This is her first fantasy. It is YA. There is sex, but it's not like super explicit. It's written the way you would expect it to be in a YA book. Okay. Moving on to March, we've got some really good ones in here. Honestly, pretty much almost all of the 2025 books that I've read so far have been bangers. They've been so good, and the lineup, it's really exciting because I feel like 2024 was like not as exciting, but yeah, I'm very excited for next year. Okay, March. First, Ant Tigress by Emily Yu Chin. This is a snarky urban fantasy novel inspired by Chinese and First Nations mythology, bursting with wit, compelling characters, and LGBTQ representation. Sounds great. I feel like this probably is going to be a lot of fun. Rebel Witch. So I would say that it is romantic fantasy, which is why it's on this list. There is a romance element to it, but it is not like if you took the romance out, there would still be a plot. So I would call it romantic fantasy. Yes, A Ragpicker King by Cassandra Clare. Really excited for this. This is the sequel to her adult debut fantasy, Swordcatcher, which was really good, honestly. Didn't know what to expect from her because she had only ever written Shadowhunter books, but it was really good, and I'm excited to see what comes next. Then we have The River Has Roots by Amal El-Motar. This sounds great. It is a novella. Follow the river Liss to the small town of Thistleford on the edge of Faerie and meet two sisters who cannot be separated, even in death. She is one of the authors of How to Lose the Time War. Really interested to see what we get from her here. Then we've got Lovely, Dark, and Deep by Alyssa A. Bonin. This is a YA dark academia novel exploring magic, loneliness, and the power of found family. This one is on my TBR for sure. Yep. Oathbound by Tracy Dion. This is book 3 in the Legendborn cycle, which I've really been enjoying. This is YA contemporary fantasy drawing on Arthurian legends. I think it's going to be great. And then The Otherwhere Post by Emily J. Taylor. This is also a YA dark fantasy about a deadly mystery that spans worlds and a teenage girl who must risk everything to uncover the truth. This one is also on my TBR. So really excited about all of those. They look good. Yes, yes, so good. I also adored Swordcatcher. It was great. It kind of does give general fiction vibes, maybe because she writes poetry as well. I don't know. Yeah, March is honestly stacked, but so are April and May. So, like, listen. Even more so. Okay, April. Don't Sleep with the Dead by Nevo. This is a novella that is a sequel to The Chosen and the Beautiful, which is her fantasy retelling of The Great Gatsby. I really enjoyed that. Nevo is one of my favorite authors. I will read everything she writes. She also is on this list twice for next year, so I'm excited to pick this one up. Oh, you know what? This is the one that I was going to remove, actually. I forgot it was already in the slides. Firebird by Juliet Cross. This is actually romantasy, so I am going to save my discussion of this for my romance and romantasy one. Yes, Firebird is romantasy, which I realized after I made the slides, so we'll talk about that one next time, but it is a beautiful cover, so enjoy it. Then we have A Palace Near the Wind by Ai Jing. This is a science fantasy novella, a story of family, loss, oppression, and rebellion for readers of Nevo's The Empress of Salt and Fortune or Nian Yang's The Black Tides of Heaven, both of which I really like. So it does scream romantasy. Yeah, so that has been moved. We'll talk about it when I do the romance thing, but, you know, sneak peek at what is to come, I guess. Nnedi Okorafor comes in once again with One Way Witch coming out in April. So this is the second book in the She Who Knows trilogy. This is set in the same universe as Who Fears Death. It's an African futurist series. I read She Who Knows and loved it. One of my favorite books from her. So I'm excited to see what happens next. That one is kind of a coming of age story. So I'm curious to see what comes after. To Kill These Monstrous Gods by Molly X. Chang, which is the sequel to Gaze Upon Wicked Gods, which I recently read and reviewed. I know that one has been controversial. I personally don't think it reads like a romance. It's one that people were calling like a colonizer romance. I disagree with that take. I agree more with like Cindy's take on that, but I do want to read book 2. I liked the first one. I thought it was interesting. And then, yeah, lastly, note on here, before we get to, there are more on another slide, but Notes from a Regicide by Isaac Fellman, a heartbreaking story of trans self-discovery with a rich relatability and sci-fi twist, a trans family saga set in a far-off familiar future. It goes beyond the concept of found family to examine how deeply we can be healed and hurt by those we choose to love. I feel like this is going to be an emotional one, but it's coming out from Tor, and I'm definitely interested to read it. All right, nope, not the last two. There's still 4 more. There's so many in April, y'all. The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. This is a masterfully woven, playfully inventive tale of imperial intrigue, cutthroat competition, and one scholar's quest to uncover the truth. I believe this is a debut. I do have an arc of it, and it's a hefty book. So interested to see where that goes. Then Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. I pretty much read whatever she writes. I like her writing a lot. This one is about three siblings who, upon the death of their father, are forced to reckon with their long festering rivalries, dangerous abilities, and the crushing weight of all their unrealized adolescent potential. So, you know, sibling relationships should be fun. Last two for April. Chaos King by Kaysen Calendar. This is the sequel to Infinity Alchemist, a slept on YA fantasy. Like, honestly, more people should be reading this. It is queer and polyamorous and really good. Like, the writing in this was excellent. Highly recommend you go check that out. I reviewed it, but I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. But I'm excited to see what happens next. And then lastly, So Medina by Akweke Emezi. This is a novel set in a magical West African world about a teen girl who must save her missing twin while learning to navigate her own terrifying new powers. Very interesting. Next is May, which also is stacked. There's so many books coming out. Yes, the Case and Calendar series is YA. It's like, I would say upper YA, but yeah, YA. All right. First, we have Brighter Than Scale, Swifter Than Flame by Neon Yang. This is a queer Asian-inspired fantasy novella about a renowned dragon slayer who never takes her armor off in public. This is pitched as she who becomes the sun meets the Mandalorian with dragons, which sounds excellent, honestly. Harmattan Season by Tochi Onyebuchi. This is a standalone fantasy novel, a hard-boiled fantasy that's Raymond Chandler meets P. Djeli Clark in post-colonial West Africa. I am sure this is going to be excellent. His books have just been really great. And then finally, The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I have an arc of this one too, and I'm really excited to read it. Holy work sometimes requires unholy deeds. Brother Diaz has been summoned to the sacred city where he is certain a commendation and grand holy assignment awaits him, but his new flock is made up of unrepentant murderers, practitioners of ghastly magic, and outright monsters, and the mission he is tasked with will require bloody measures from them all in order to achieve its righteous ends. Yes. Jessica, you have to try book 3. Like, if you get to book 3 and you still don't like it, but like, you need to read book 3 because everything changes. I just highly recommend. Right? The Mandalorian with dragons. I mean, yeah. I'm glad to help. There are many interesting books coming out. Okay, next is Amplitudes, Stories of Queer and Trans Futurity, edited by Lee Mandello. This is a anthology of short stories, 22 speculative stories, edited by Lee Mandello, exploring the vast potentialities of our queer and trans futures. Some of the authors in this are Sarah Gailey, Margaret Killjoy, Sam Miller, Neon Yang, and others. Sounds interesting. And then The Incandescent by Emily Tesh is pitched as Naomi Novik's Scalaman series meets plain bad heroines in a sapphic dark academia fantasy. I mean, sounds right up my alley. I will definitely will be reading those. Sorry about that. Yeah, no pie's gonna be hard. Yeah, I'm really excited to Harmattan Season. I did talk about The Devils, yes. Then we have A Letter from the Lonesome Shore by Sylvie Cathrall. This is the sequel to A Letter to the Luminous Deep, which I loved. It is a slower paced sci-fi novel that is in the form of letters. It feels like sci-fi meets Jane Austen, kind of, but like underwater, quieter sci-fi with relationships as the main thing. I loved it. Not everybody's cup of tea, but I'm a big fan. Then we have The Adventures of Mary Darling by Pat Murphy. In this subversive take on both Peter Pan and Sherlock Holmes, a daring mother is the populist hero the Victorian era never knew it needed. Sounds like fun. And then supposedly we're getting The Strength of the Few by James Islington. This is the sequel to The Will of the Many, which I have not read yet, but I really want to read it. I there's no cover, there's not a lot of information. We think it's May. We'll see. I would not be shocked if this gets pushed to later, but we'll see. Right? Jane Austen underwater, Peter Pan meets Sherlock Holmes. I mean, right? These are great. All right. Last couple for May, The Art of Exile by Andrea Max. This is a debut YA science fantasy pitched as the Atlas 6 meets the Da Vinci Code with Jewish representation. Sounds interesting. And then I love this cover so much. The Floating World by Axie O. Final Fantasy meets Shadow and Bone in this romantic fantasy reimagining the Korean legend of celestial maidens. I will be reading this one. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a stunning cover. Moving on to June. And for reference, I have books all the way through November in this list. So, yeah. All right. First, The Potency of Ungovernable Impulses by Malka Older. This is the third book in the Mossy and Pleiades series. I love these so much. They are like a cozy sci-fi murder mystery with a sapphic romance novella. I adore them. Very excited for book 3. The Witch Roads by Kate Elliott. This is the start of a new series. Status is hereditary, class is bestowed, trust must be earned. When an arrogant prince and his equally arrogant entourage get stuck in or let her halt as part of a brutal political intrigue, competent and sunny deputy courier Ellen, once a child slave meant to shield noblemen from the poisonous Pal, is assigned to guide him through the hills to reach his destination. When she warns him not to enter the haunted spires, the prince doesn't heed her advice, and the man who emerges from the towers isn't the same man who entered, and then they have to try to journey home safely, I guess. Sounds interesting. I always love Kate Elliott's stuff, so I think it'll be great. Then Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by Victoria Schwab. This is sapphic vampires set in 3 different years. We've got Santo Domingo in 1532, London in 1837, and Boston in 2019. 3 young women, their bodies planted in the same soil, their stories tangling like roots. One grows high, one grows deep, and one grows wild, and all of them grow teeth. Should be interesting. I love this. 20 from other booktubers, and so far there's only 1 overlap. That's honestly, that's pretty impressive. I spent a while looking for all of these, so yeah. Okay. Next, a couple up more. The Mercy Makers by Tessa Gratton. They just released the cover yesterday as I was making these, which was great timing. A talented heretic must decide between the pursuit of forbidden magic or the ecstasy of forbidden love. Either way, her choice will upend the world. In the start of a sweeping romantic epic fantasy trilogy, it's probably sapphic. Tessa Gratton usually writes sapphic stuff, so that'll be fun. Can an empire trip and fall on a mere strand of silk? And then finally, A Mastery of Monsters by Lizelle Sambury. Y'all know I love her books. Ninth House meets Legendborn in this thrilling first book in a dark academia fantasy series about a teen who's willing to do anything to find her brother, even infiltrate a secret society full of monsters. I'm sure it'll be great. All right. Yes. July. Okay, we're going to have fewer now. We're getting farther into the year. There's not as many. So we're getting through these pretty well, actually. Okay, first we have The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. Look at the gorgeous cover. This is a companion novel to The Spell Shop, which is one of my favorite books of the year, a cozy fantasy with romantic elements. This is set on a nearby island following a different character, but set in the same world. Think it's going to be great. And then we have The Memory of the Ogisi by Moses Ose Utomi. This is the final book in the Forever Desert series. This is a trilogy of novellas drawing on West African mythology. The first 2 are so good. Definitely excited to read the final one. Yes. You have till July to read the spell shop. Everyone should read it. I love it so much. It's so good. Okay. And then we have Code and Codex by Yoon Lee. There's not a cover for this yet, but it sounds great. I love Yoon Lee. A space opera adventure of linguistics magic in this return to adult science fiction about plans to reach backwards and forwards in time by revising history. Should be very interesting. All right, August. That's all we've got for July. In August, we have Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. This is a dark reimagining of Snow White, steeped in poison, intrigue, and treason of the most magical kind. I love how she's doing these fairy tale retellings. I think it's going to be really good. Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. This sounds fun. So, Catabasis, noun, ancient Greek, the story of a hero's descent to the underworld. Two academic rivals from Cambridge must travel to hell to rescue the soul of their advisor. Getting there was easy. Surviving it and each other is another thing entirely. I feel like this one's going to be great. Sounds really fun. Lastly, we have A Benny and the Kingdom of Gold by P. Jelly Clark. This is the only middle grade fantasy I'm putting on this list, but it's another one that is really slept on. This is the sequel to A Benny's Song. So good, y'all. More people need to read this. Amazing middle grade fantasy that is dealing with really big issues as well in an age appropriate way. Highly recommend. I will be picking this up and purchasing a copy. September. Okay, so we have Fate's Bane by C.L. Clarke, the author of The Unbroken. So this is a new novella. If Romeo and Juliet were cursed sapphic artificers living in the wild fens, surrounded by clan warfare and mysterious gods in a world that feels like the Northmen. Sounds interesting, right? We should also be getting the third book in the Magic of the Lost series, which is the third book after The Unbroken. I don't have information of when that is, but supposedly in 2025 we're getting that as well. Yes, Amina al-Sirafi 2 by Shannon Chakraborty is scheduled currently for September. I know this has been pushed back a couple of times, but hopefully we'll get it. I'm excited for it. I really liked the second one. I liked the first one a lot. A Land So Wide by Erin A. Craig. This is her adult debut novel, which I'm excited. I love her writing. I just actually read her 13th Child and it was great. This is a loose retelling of the Scottish ballad Tam Lin, set in the beautiful but brutal 1700s Canadian wilderness in a cursed logging town, featuring a woman touched with uncanniness who must outsmart men and monsters. Think that'll be good. And then finally, we have Immortal Dark 2 by Tigest Girma. This is a controversial book, but it is one of my favorite books of the year. I absolutely love the first one. It's like dark academia fantasy with black vampires, and like, it was great. Very, very excited for that. No, not that one. Tamlet, like the myth. The myth. Okay. October. A Mouthful of Dust by Nevo. I just put her author picture here because we don't have like anything for it yet. This is going to be the Singing Hills Cycle Book 6, which is a series of fantasy novellas that are excellent. So we've got that coming in October. We've got Kill the Beast by Sarah Swift, which is pitched as Witcher meets Howl's Moving Castle. A Witcher-esque fairy hunter and a useless but fashionable nobleman are forced to team up to kill a cursed beast in a story of revenge, redemption, found family, and what it really means to be a monster. So sounds really interesting. And then this just got announced yesterday, so it's a new thing. Ken Liu, they just announced like some of his new books that are going to be coming. All That We See or Seem is going to be coming in October. This is a thriller. This is going to be part of a trilogy of sci-fi thrillers with AI-driven loneliness, international crime, and hackers. I love Ken Liu's writing, so that should be really interesting. And then lastly, we have Incarnadine by Tasha Suri. This is a knight and a witch who must change the fate of magic and the world by altering the end of their story, pitched as Green Knight meets the Starless Sea with reincarnation. Very interesting. Okay, November. Lastly, I've got 3 November releases, and then that will be it for sci-fi fantasy. First up, this is Travis Baldree's photo, Brigands and Breadknives. This is the next Legends and Lattes book coming out in November. We don't know anything other than the title, but we're getting another one. Very excited for lovers of that. Yes, Incarnadine is also sapphic. Absolutely. The Bookshop Below by Georgia Summers. This is a standalone fantasy about a disgraced bookseller offered the chance to restore a magical bookshop to its former glory, who enters a dark underworld of unscrupulous collectors, deadly ink magic, and shady societies. And then finally, Witchlight by Susan Dennard. This is the much awaited finale to the Witchlands series, which I am a huge fan of. Um, Upper YA epic fantasy that is a good crossover to adult series. I am so excited to see what happens next. Okay, cool. Brigands and Breadknives follows Fern from the prequel. Good to know. Thank you. So there you go. Those are all 56 of the sci-fi fantasy books on my radar for 2025. We've got so many great sounding books coming out. Really looking forward to it. To give you a sense of what you can expect, I will also be doing a list of romance and romantasy, and then a list of horror, mystery, and thrillers. So those are going to be the 3 anticipated releases videos you can expect from me this year. Yeah, great year of books. Really excited for that. Thanks for hanging out with me. And again, as a reminder, currently 20% off the remaining cozy holiday boxes that I have. So if you want to check out the Ko-fi shop, the link is down below. And yeah, thanks. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later. Bye.